Welcome back. Now let us continue with styling our navigation bar. Okay, now what we are going to do is to add a border at the bottom when the cursor hovers over the link. So for any unordered list, when you hover, you want us to display a border at the bottom. I'll give it that color. That solid is to display it without any gradient or any what. Just add some height of about 57 pixels. Now let's see what happens. Just refresh this. Okay, it is not responding, so let's go back and troubleshoot. Now let's save. I didn't save. Okay, now it works. So now we've added our border at the bottom when the cursor hovers over. Now let's go ahead and hide this content. We don't want it to be displayed before we hover over the donations link. So what we shall do is to enter into the list. Remember, this is a list within this unordered list, so it is a list under a list, so we have to enter until when we point to this point here. So let's go to our CSS and I'll show you how it works. So we shall go to the first list item, then also enter into that list and point to the list items inside it. Now the CSS we are applying here is for this second list inside our list item. That's why it is this. So we shall go ahead and add our CSS. We want to hide it by default, then also give it a width. We want it to cover the entire width, so we shall assign it 100%. So give it a height of around 60 pixels. Shall give it a line height over 7 ph. Also background color white, and then I'll just give it a text alignment. Let's just center our text. Now let's save and see. Just refresh. Now it has been hidden. The display none is the one that hides items in CSS. So now we want it to be displayed when the cursor hovers over this list item. Alright, let's go back to our CSS. Say to our list item, when it is hovered over, what happens to our list item inside it should be displayed. Let's save, go back to our CS, to our browser. Now our list items under a list item are being displayed when the cursor hovers. Alright, so let's continue. Let's add some CSS to our navigations. The left, adding to navbar 2. list items. So now what I'm doing here is to point to the list items under navbar2 so that in case we have other list items, this CSS does not affect them. So now I'm being particular on which items I'm styling, the list items or the unordered list under navbar2. Okay, I'll go ahead also to style. Right. What I will do is to add a width here. Of 80%. Also text alignment to the right. Our border none. So now I also go ahead and style our button. It is under navbar2. So I'm going to point to a button under navbar2 so that any other button is not affected by this CSS. Say list item and look for that anchor tab and then the button. Right, so now I'm pointing to that particular login button we have on our menu. Give this color white. Give it a width of around 13 VH. VH is responsive, that's why I'm using it. And then 5 VH of height. Then I'll give it a border radius of around 50 pixels. Then I'll give it some opacity. Opacity now reduces or increases on the transparency of an element. I'll give it 8. Then finally I'll give it a background color. Give it this just to maintain our colors. Now let's go and refresh and see what we have. So it has gone this side, but our CSS has not been applied. Alright, shall go ahead and check out what happens, what is not going right. Okay, okay, now since our button is not responding to our CSS, let's go ahead and troubleshoot this. Let's verify the elements. Okay, you see it is not in this anchor tab, so we need to put it so that it can be able to navigate us to another page. Alright, so I'll just copy this button element, sit here, okay, I can give this a hyperreference. For now it is not pointing to anywhere. Save that. So let's go back to our HTML, our browser. Boom, it has responded to our CSS. So I was pointing to a button inside the list navigation partition navbar2, which is inside this anchor tab, but then we didn't have this, so our CSS was lost. Now it can be able to find this button here. So let's proceed with our CSS. Now what happens if they hover over the button the user hovers over the button, we want us to just reduce on the opacity. That will be okay. After to just copy this. Right, when they hover over the button, we want to reduce on the opacity. Alright. So when we go to our browser and refresh, see, opacity. Okay. So now let's go ahead and style our banner. Okay. Now we are going to add the background image to our banner. We are going to give it a width, height, and other attributes. Okay, let's confirm the selector we used for our banner. It is a class. So we are going to use .banner, and then shall give it a width. Want it to cover the entire width. Shall give it 100%. Then we shall give it a height of around 90 VH. Shall float it to the left. Okay. Shall give it a margin. Remember, margin creates space outside any div partition or any element. When you give a margin to any element, it creates space outside that element. Okay, so I'll give it margin top 0 pixels, and I'll flag it in content so that it is not overridden. Then I'll give it a margin at the bottom as well of 110 VH. Okay, so we removed any margins at the top, and then we are giving a margin at the bottom of our banner. So I'll give it color. Then the text alignment to the center. Then also I'll give it now a background image. So to add a background image, we have that attribute of background image. So you point to the directory of the image using the unified resource locator, which is URL. And then you can either use double quotes or single quotes to point to the directory. Now my image is in the same folder with the mystyle.css files. So I'll just give the name of the image, which is JPEG if I'm not mistaken. Alright, so I'll go here ahead. So let's first save and see, because now we've added a lot of code. We need to be able to check it out so that it is easy to troubleshoot just in case of any failure. Boom, our image has appeared, but then it is being replicated. So we need to overcome this. We want it to be 1 so that it is not repeated. We shall have to add some attributes here to override that. So we shall give it a background size so that we eliminate that repetition. Background size of 100%. We want it to cover, so the width comes first and then the height. Our banner is 90 ph, so we shall give it the exact height. So when we save this, the image covers the entire banner. So now we come and remove the repeat. We don't want it to repeat. We shall say background repeat, no repeat, so that it doesn't repeat. Alright, so now that's it for our banner. When we save this and refresh, boom. So now we want to push this a little bit down. As you see, this has got some margin, so we want our image to display well, so we shall go ahead, just add some margin at the top. Shall give it 50 pixels, so we can comment out of this and see what happens to our work. Right, so this is fine. We've now finished designing our navigation bar and our banner, so we're remaining with the themes area and then the contents area and the footer, so that we build our site. This is it for now. We shall continue from there in the next class.